Imagine being so insignificant that an entire galactic empire looks at your species and decides you're not even worth conquering. That's exactly what happened to humanity 300 years ago, when the HFY Dominion swept across our corner of the galaxy, claiming system after system with ruthless efficiency. They catalogued us as primitive carbon-based life forms, classification harmless curiosity, and moved on to more valuable targets. It was the greatest insult in human history, and the greatest mistake the galaxy would ever witness, because when humanity was dismissed, overlooked, and left to develop in the shadows of cosmic indifference, something extraordinary happened. We didn't just survive, we evolved, adapted, and became something the universe had never seen before. We became the storm that no one saw coming. The HFY thought they knew what mercy looked like when they spared Earth. They were about to learn what happens when you show mercy to a species that remembers every slight, every dismissal, every moment they were deemed unworthy. The galaxy is about to meet the humans they created through their contempt. And legends, as they say, are born from the ashes of underestimation. The massive shadow fell across Earth's moon first, then slowly crept toward the blue marble that held 4 billion souls who had no idea their entire existence was about to be judged by beings from beyond the stars. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the emergency command center buried 300 feet beneath the Pentagon, watching the largest artificial construct humanity had ever witnessed position itself in Earth's orbit like a predator sizing up its prey. The ship was impossible to comprehend in its entirety. Sensors suggested it stretched nearly 200 kilometers from bow to stern. Its surface a seamless blend of materials that seemed to bend light around its edges. Smaller craft, each the size of Manhattan, drifted around the mothership like remora fish attending a whale. The readings made no sense. The power signatures alone suggested technology that humanity wouldn't achieve for centuries, if ever. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. The young communications officer had been on duty when the first gravitational anomalies appeared 6 hours ago. Now his uniform was soaked with sweat despite the climate-controlled bunker. "Put it through," Chen ordered, her weathered hands clasped behind her back. At 62, she had commanded fleets in 3 different conflicts, survived the water wars, and negotiated the Pacific Accords. Nothing in her extensive military career had prepared her for this moment, but she'd be damned if she'd let that show. The main screen flickered, static giving way to an image that would haunt humanity for the next 3 centuries. The being that appeared was tall, perhaps 8 feet in height, with elongated limbs that moved with predatory grace. Its skin had a translucent quality that revealed the intricate network of what might have been veins or circuitry beneath. Most unsettling were its eyes, multifaceted like an insect's, but with an intelligence that seemed to pierce through the screen and examine each human watching, with the clinical detachment of a scientist studying bacteria. Inhabitants of the 3rd planetary body, the being spoke, its voice a harmonious blend that seemed to resonate in multiple frequencies simultaneously. The universal translator, hastily assembled from theoretical models, struggled to convey the nuances, but the meaning was clear enough. "I am Executor Vaithma of the HFY Dominion. Your species has been catalogued and assessed according to Dominion protocols established over the past 4,000 of your years." Chen stepped forward, knowing that billions of eyes across the planet were watching this moment through hijacked television signals and emergency broadcasts. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Defense Coalition. We welcome contact with your civilization and hope for peaceful dialogue between our peoples." The being's head tilted slightly, an almost human gesture that somehow made the entire exchange more unsettling. "Admiral Sarah Chen," it repeated, pronouncing each syllable with perfect precision. "Your optimism is noted but unnecessary. The HFY Dominion does not engage in dialogue with species below classification level 7. Your current development places you at level 2, possibly approaching level 3 within the next century of your time measurement." A cold dread began to settle in Chen's stomach. Around the command center, analysts and military officials exchanged worried glances. This wasn't going to be the inspiring first contact moment that humanity had dreamed about for generations. "Classification level 7, Chen asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "A standard measurement of technological, social, and military capability," Vaithma explained with the patience of a teacher addressing a slow child. "Level 1 encompasses primitive societies with basic tool usage. Level 7 represents the minimum threshold for acknowledgement as a spacefaring civilization worthy of Dominion attention. Level 10 is reserved for civilizations that pose potential threats to Dominion interests. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. And what happens to civilizations below level 7? For the first time, something that might have been emotion flickered across Vathma's features. Was it amusement? Pity? That depends entirely on their potential for advancement and their strategic value. Your species presents an interesting case study. You have achieved basic atomic manipulation and rudimentary space travel, yet your social structures remain fragmented and inefficient. Your military capabilities are... The being paused, consulting something off-screen. Quaint. The insult stung, made worse by its casual delivery. Chen felt the anger of every human watching this exchange, felt the collective pride of her species being dismissed with a single word. However, Vathma continued, your species displays remarkable adaptability and creative problem-solving capabilities. These traits, while currently underdeveloped, suggest potential for future evolution. Additionally, your planet's location holds minimal strategic importance to current Dominion expansion plans. What are you saying? Chen demanded. I am saying, Admiral Sarah Chen, that the HFY Dominion has decided to spare your species. You will be granted a provisional grace period of 500 of your years to advance your civilization. If, at the end of this period, you have achieved level 7 status, formal contact will be re-established. If not, the being's multifaceted eyes seem to focus directly on Chen through the screen. The decision will be re-evaluated based on strategic necessities at that time. The silence in the command center was deafening. Chen could hear her own heartbeat, the soft hum of electronics, the barely audible breathing of 24 people who had just learned that their entire species had been judged and found wanting. You're leaving? She asked, a voice smaller than she intended. The Dominion has more pressing concerns than monitoring every primitive civilization in this galactic sector. Your solar system will be marked as a developing territory under Dominion protection. No other spacefaring civilizations will be permitted to interfere with your natural progression. Consider this gift wisely, Admiral Chen. Few species receive such consideration. The transmission began to flicker, the connection weakening. Chen stepped closer to the screen, desperation driving her forward. Wait, can you at least tell us what we need to do? How do we reach level 7? What do you expect from us? Vathma's image solidified for one final moment, and something in its expression might have been genuine sympathy. Survive, Admiral Chen. Evolve. Prove that the Dominion's mercy was justified. Your species has been granted the most precious gift in the galaxy, time. Do not waste it on the petty conflicts that currently divide you. The universe is far more dangerous and unforgiving than your kind can possibly imagine. The screen went black. Within minutes, long-range sensors confirmed what everyone already knew. The massive fleet was departing, their impossible ships accelerating beyond Earth's ability to track. Humanity was alone again, but now they carried the weight of cosmic judgment on their shoulders. In the days that followed, the world changed in ways both profound and subtle. The revelation that humanity was considered a primitive curiosity by an advanced galactic civilization sparked reactions ranging from despair to defiant rage. Religious leaders proclaimed the encounter everything from divine judgment to demonic deception. Politicians scrambled to maintain order as populations grappled with the reality that Earth was nothing more than an ignored backwater in a vast cosmic community. But it was the scientists and engineers who had the most interesting reaction. Dr. Gravegreen, Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading theoretical physicist, stood before the United Nations 3 weeks after the encounter and delivered a speech that would become known as the Cosmic Insult Doctrine. They called us primitive, she said, her voice carrying across the packed General Assembly. They dismissed our achievements, our potential, our very existence, as barely worthy of their notice. They gave us charity, mercy, as if we were stray animals too pathetic to put down. She paused, letting the words sink in. Representatives from every nation leaned forward, recognizing something dangerous and powerful in her tone. I propose we show them exactly what human primitives can accomplish when motivated by the proper incentive. They want level 7? They want us to prove ourselves worthy of their acknowledgement? Let's give them something they'll never forget. The applause started slowly. A few scattered individuals who understood what Vasquez was suggesting. Then it grew, building into a thunderous roar of approval that shook the building itself. Humanity had been challenged, dismissed, and underestimated. It was the greatest mistake the galaxy would ever witness. Unknown to the departing HFY fleet, they had just provided humanity with the most powerful motivator in human history: spite. They had looked at Earth and seen a species too weak, too divided, too insignificant to matter. They had no way of knowing that throughout human history, The greatest achievements had always come from those who were told they couldn't succeed. The Renaissance had been born from the ashes of plague and war. The Industrial Revolution had emerged from the need to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. The space age had begun because humans refused to accept that the sky was the limit. Now, faced with the ultimate insult, being deemed unworthy by the cosmic community, humanity began to do what it did best. They began to prove the doubters wrong. In research facilities across the globe, scientists who had spent careers in competition with each other suddenly found themselves collaborating on projects that would have been unthinkable months before. The genetic research that had been held back by ethical concerns took on new urgency when viewed through the lens of species survival. Military technologies that had been developed for terrestrial conflicts were reimagined as tools for cosmic relevance. The first breakthrough came 18 months after the encounter, when Dr. Vasquez's team successfully reversed engineered aspects of the gravitational manipulation they had observed in the HFY ships. It wasn't much, barely enough to reduce an object's effective mass by 3%, but it was a start. The second breakthrough came 3 years later, when Chinese bioengineers successfully created the first stable human genetic enhancement. Volunteers, and there were thousands, underwent treatments that improved reaction time, increased cellular regeneration, and enhanced cognitive processing speed. The changes were subtle, barely noticeable to casual observation, but they represented humanity's first steps toward becoming something more than what the HFY had dismissed. But perhaps the most significant change wasn't technological or biological, it was cultural. The revelation that humanity was being judged by cosmic standards had united the species in a way that no terrestrial crisis ever could. The old divisions, national, racial, religious, began to seem petty when measured against the vast indifference of the galaxy. Chen, now promoted to Director of Planetary Defense, stood in her new office 5 years after the encounter, looking out at the construction of humanity's first orbital defense platform. The massive structure would be nothing compared to the HFY mothership, but it represented something far more important than raw size or firepower. It represented humanity's refusal to accept their assigned place in the cosmic order. "Ma'am," Rodriguez called from his position at the communications console. He had insisted on following Chen to her new assignment, claiming that someone who had been present for humanity's greatest insult should be there for their eventual vindication. "We're receiving the monthly report from the deep space monitoring stations." "Any sign of them?" Chen asked, though she knew the answer. For 5 years, humanity had been watching the stars, hoping for some indication that the HFY were monitoring their progress, but space remained frustratingly empty of alien presence. "Nothing, ma'am. We're still alone." Chen nodded, turning back to watch the orbital construction. Alone perhaps, but no longer dismissed. The workers outside her window represented something the HFY hadn't anticipated: humanity's capacity to transform insult into inspiration, dismissal into determination. They had spared humanity once, considering them too primitive to bother destroying. It was an act of casual contempt that would echo through history as the moment when humanity stopped being content with their place in the universe and began demanding something better. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. But Chen smiled as she watched her species build toward a future that would make the HFY's mercy the most expensive mistake in galactic history. Humanity had been given time. Now they would show the universe exactly what they could accomplish with it. Captain Marcus Torres floated in the observation deck of Prometheus Station, humanity's first permanent outpost beyond Neptune's orbit, watching the construction crews put the finishing touches on what would become the most audacious project in human history. 112 years had passed since the HFY had dismissed humanity as primitives, and those years had transformed the species in ways that would have been unimaginable to Admiral Chen's generation. The man floating beside him would have been impossible to mistake for a human from Chen's era. "Doctor?" Keiko Nakamura stood nearly 7 feet tall, her enhanced musculature visible even through the advanced environmental suit she wore. Her eyes held a golden tint that marked her as one of the 4th-generation enhanced humans, whose genetic modifications had been refined to the point where they represented a new branch of the species entirely. When she spoke, her words came with the precision and speed of someone whose neural pathways had been optimized for complex problem-solving. "The final calculations are complete," she said, her voice carrying the subtle harmonic undertones that marked her vocal cords as artificially enhanced for communication in various atmospheric conditions. "Project Lazarus is ready for initial testing." Torres nodded, his own modifications less visible but no less significant. The neural implants behind his left ear could process tactical information at superhuman speeds. while the synthetic muscle fibers woven throughout his body gave him strength that would have been considered impossible a century earlier. He was a child of the Enhancement Wars, born in the underground facilities where humanity had conducted its most radical experiments in biological evolution. "Any word from the deep space monitoring stations?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. For over a century, humanity had been watching the stars for any sign that the Kethvar were paying attention to their development. The monitoring stations, now numbering in the hundreds and scattered throughout the outer system, had detected signs of interstellar travel, energy signatures that suggested faster-than-light movement in distant star systems, but nothing that indicated direct observation of Earth. The watchers remained silent. Nakamura confirmed, using the informal term that had developed for their mysterious judges. Long-range analysis suggests increased Kethvar activity in the Centauri sector, approximately 40 to 7 light-years from Earth. Whatever they're doing out there, it appears to be consuming significant resources. Torres smiled grimly. The ignorance worked both ways, it seemed. The Kethvar had no idea what humanity had become in the shadows of their dismissal, just as humanity could only guess at the scope of Dominion activities in the wider galaxy. But that was about to change. He activated his neural interface, connecting directly to Prometheus Station's central computer. Information flowed through his consciousness at speeds that would have given an unenhanced human instant brain death. Construction reports, resource allocation data, personnel files for the 15,000 individuals working on the project. In seconds, he had absorbed what would have taken days to review using traditional methods. Project Lazarus was humanity's first attempt at true faster-than-light travel, but it represented far more than just advanced propulsion. The ship currently taking shape in the station's construction bay incorporated technologies that had been developed through decades of reverse engineering alien observations, biological enhancement research, and what could only be described as inspired desperation. The hull was constructed from metamaterials that could alter their molecular structure in response to external conditions. The power source was a contained fusion reactor that had been enhanced with gravitational manipulation techniques derived from studying the Kethvar ships. Most importantly, the crew positions had been designed specifically for enhanced humans, beings who could survive acceleration forces that would liquefy their ancestors and process information at speeds necessary for faster-than-light navigation. "Show me the crew roster," Torres commanded, and the information appeared directly in his visual cortex. 12 individuals, each representing the pinnacle of human enhancement technology. Their genetic modifications read like a catalogue of impossible improvements: enhanced radiation resistance, improved bone density, neural processing speeds increased by a factor of 20, reaction times measured in single-digit milliseconds. Captain Elena Vasquez Chen was the mission commander, a direct descendant of both the physicist who had delivered the cosmic insult doctrine and Admiral Chen herself. Her genetic heritage had been carefully preserved and enhanced over 4 generations, creating someone who embodied both the intellectual brilliance and tactical expertise of her ancestors. At 45, she looked 25 and could think faster than any human in history. Her crew represented similar achievements. Dr. James Okafor was an enhanced engineer whose modified hands could perform micro-construction tasks while his brain simultaneously calculated complex equations. Lieutenant Sarah Kim had been enhanced for combat situations that might arise during first contact scenarios. Her reflexes were so quick that she could dodge projectiles fired from conventional weapons. But it was the ship's navigator, Dr. Chen Wei, who represented humanity's most radical advancement. The descendant of researchers who had been working on consciousness transfer technology, Wei existed as a hybrid being, part biological, part artificial intelligence. His enhanced brain could process the multidimensional calculations necessary for faster-than-light navigation, while his artificial components provided perfect memory recall and mathematical precision. "Biological impossibilities," Torres murmured, using the phrase that had become common among the enhanced generations. It was what the Kethvar would have called humanity's development, impossible evolutionary leaps that violated their understanding of natural progression. "Sir," Nakamura asked, not catching his comment. "Nothing. Just thinking about how far we've come." Torres gestured toward the construction bay, where the sleek form of Lazarus was taking shape. The ship was beautiful in a way that conventional human engineering had never achieved. Its lines flowed like living tissue, while its surface seemed to shift and adapt to the light conditions around it. Our ancestors would have called this magic.
"Our ancestors would have called us monsters," Nakamura replied with dark humor.
She was right, of course. The genetic modifications that had become routine in the past century would have horrified earlier generations. The debates over human enhancement had raged for decades before the reality of cosmic judgment made such concerns seem quaint. When faced with the choice between remaining purely human and earning the respect of an advanced galactic civilization, humanity had chosen evolution. The transformation hadn't been without cost. The enhancement wars of the 2000 ADS had killed nearly 1 billion people as different factions fought over the direction of human development. Religious groups had declared the modifications blasphemous, while political movements had emerged around various enhancement philosophies. The Pure Human Alliance had launched terrorist attacks against research facilities, while the Evolutionary Front had conducted illegal experiments on unwilling subjects. But necessity had eventually overcome ideology. When faced with extinction-level threats from enhanced terrorists, even the purest factions had begun accepting basic modifications. When the first asteroid mining operations required workers who could survive in deep space, genetic enhancement became an economic necessity. When the ocean cities needed populations that could thrive in high-pressure environments, biological modification became a matter of survival. By 2150, less than 20% of humanity remained completely unmodified. The rest had become something new, still recognizably human in their core psychology and values, but physically and mentally transformed into beings capable of thriving in environments that would have killed their ancestors. Status report on the other projects? Torres asked. Nakamura's expression grew serious. The colony ships are ahead of schedule. New Geneva and Harmony will be ready for launch within 6 months, each carrying 50,000 colonists to establish footholds in the Alpha Centauri and Wolf 359 systems. The defensive satellites around Earth and Mars are at 70% completion. When finished, they'll provide coverage that should deter any casual invasion attempt. She paused, accessing her own neural implants for additional data. The really interesting development is coming from the Consciousness Research Division. Dr. Reeves believes they're close to achieving stable mind upload technology. If successful, we could theoretically preserve human consciousness in digital form, creating backup copies of essential personnel. Torres whistled softly, a sound that carried unusual harmonic complexity due to his enhanced vocal cords. Consciousness upload represented the ultimate insurance policy, the ability to preserve human knowledge and personality beyond biological death. It also represented a level of technology that might impress even the Kethvar. What about the military developments? Classified beyond my clearance level, Nakamura admitted, but rumors suggest some extraordinary advances. The Enhanced Marine Corps has been conducting training exercises in the asteroid belt, preparing for combat scenarios that assume enemies with superior technology. Their modifications go far beyond what civilian enhancement allows. Torres nodded. He had clearance to access those files, and what he had seen was both inspiring and terrifying. The Enhanced Marines represented humanity's attempt to create soldiers capable of fighting battles in space, on hostile worlds, and against enemies with technology centuries ahead of Earth's. Their modifications included reinforced skeletal structures, redundant organ systems, neural interfaces that could control multiple weapon systems simultaneously, and genetic alterations that allowed them to survive in vacuum for short periods. They were no longer entirely human, but they were undeniably effective. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. Torres accepted the connection, and Admiral Rebecca Santos materialized as a holographic projection in the observation deck. Santos was one of the oldest enhanced humans still in active service, her modifications dating back to the early experimental programs of the 2060s. At 93, she looked 40 and moved with the fluid grace of someone whose body had been optimized for physical performance. "Captain Torres," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had overseen humanity's transformation for half a century, "I have news from the deep space monitoring stations that you need to hear immediately." Torres straightened, his enhanced reflexes bringing him to full alertness in milliseconds. "What is it, Admiral?" "Long-range sensors have detected multiple faster-than-light signatures converging on a star system approximately 32 light-years from Earth. The energy patterns match Kethvar technology, but the scale is unprecedented. We're looking at what appears to be a major military operation involving hundreds of ships." The implications hit Torres like a physical blow. For over a century, humanity had operated under the assumption that they were developing in isolation, ignored by the galactic community that had dismissed them. If the Kethvar were conducting major operations only 30 light-years away, it suggested that the galaxy was far more active and potentially dangerous than anyone had realized. "Any indication that they're aware of our development?" he asked. "None that we can detect," Santos replied. But Captain, this changes our timeline significantly. If there's active conflict in our local galactic neighborhood, our 500-year grace period might not be as stable as we assumed. Torres felt his enhanced neural implants shifting into tactical analysis mode, processing threat scenarios at superhuman speeds. Recommendation, Admiral? Accelerate Project Lazarus immediately. We need reconnaissance capability beyond our solar system, and we need it soon. If the galaxy is at war, humanity needs to know about it before the war comes to us. The hologram flickered and disappeared, leaving Torres and Nakamura alone with the weight of cosmic uncertainty. For over a century, humanity had been preparing for eventual contact with the Kethvar, working toward the day when they could demonstrate their worthiness for galactic acknowledgement. Now it appeared that the universe might not wait for humanity's convenience. How quickly can we complete Lazarus? Torres asked. Nakamura's golden eyes unfocused as she consulted her neural implants, processing construction schedules and resource allocation data at impossible speeds. If we prioritize completion over safety testing, we could have her ready for launch in 8 weeks. The crew training is already complete. They've been running simulations for 2 years. 8 weeks to go from a species that had been dismissed as primitive to one capable of faster-than-light exploration. Torres smiled grimly at the irony. The Kethvar had given humanity 500 years to prove themselves worthy, but circumstances might force them to make that proof in less than a century and a quarter. Do it, he ordered. Authorization Torres 77 Alpha. All resources, all personnel, maximum priority. As Nakamura began issuing commands through her neural interface, Torres returned his attention to the construction bay where Lazarus waited. The ship represented more than just advanced technology. It embodied humanity's transformation, from a species that begged for mercy to one that demanded respect. The galaxy was about to meet the humans that the Kethvar had created through their dismissal. Enhanced, unified, and driven by over a century of cosmic insult, humanity was ready to prove that mercy, once given, could become the foundation for something far more dangerous than the beings who had granted it could have ever imagined. In 8 weeks, Lazarus would carry 12 enhanced humans beyond the edge of human space, into a galaxy that had no idea what humanity had become in the shadows of indifference. They would return with information that would change everything, or they would not return at all. Either way, the age of human isolation was about to end. Captain Elena Vasquez-Chen felt the familiar sensation of faster-than-light transition wash over her enhanced nervous system as Lazarus dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Her genetic modifications allowed her to remain conscious during the transition, something that would have been impossible for baseline humans, while her neural implants processed the flood of sensor data that immediately began streaming through the ship's systems. What she saw made her enhanced heart rate spike to levels that would have been fatal to her ancestors. The system was a graveyard. Dozens of massive ships drifted in the void, their hulls torn open, and venting atmosphere in crystalline clouds that caught the dim light of the distant star. Some of the vessels were clearly Kethvar in design. She recognized the flowing organic curves from the historical records of humanity's first contact, but others were completely unfamiliar, their angular geometries and metallic surfaces suggesting a different technological philosophy entirely. "My God," whispered Dr. P. Chen Wei from his position at the navigation console, his hybrid consciousness processing the tactical situation at superhuman speeds. It's a battlefield. And it's recent. Some of these energy signatures are less than 48 hours old. Lieutenant Sarah Kim's combat-enhanced reflexes had already brought the ship to full alert status, her modified nervous system analyzing potential threats faster than the ship's computers could track. "Captain, I'm reading massive debris fields throughout the outer system. Whatever happened here, it was on a scale that makes our largest military exercises look like training exercises." Vasquez-Chen activated her command neural interface, connecting directly to Lazarus's sensor array. Information flooded her consciousness: ship masses, energy signatures, trajectory analyses, and something that made her enhanced blood run cold. The debris wasn't just from spaceships. Mixed in with the wreckage of military vessels were the remains of civilian craft, orbital habitats, and what appeared to be the shattered remnants of a space-based industrial complex. This hadn't been just a military engagement, it had been the complete annihilation of an entire civilization's presence in this system. "Dr. Okafor," she called to her chief engineer, "I need a full analysis of the wreckage." "What can you tell me about the weapons that did this?" James Okafor's enhanced hands moved across his control interface with inhuman precision, his modified nervous system allowing him to process multiple data streams simultaneously. "Captain, these damage patterns are unlike anything in our tactical databases. The Kethvar ships appear to have been destroyed by some kind of directed energy weapon that can cut through their hull materials like they were paper. But the unknown vessels, he paused, his enhanced mind struggling to process what he was seeing. They appear to have been destroyed from the inside out. Molecular disruption on a massive scale. The implications were staggering. Humanity had spent over a century developing weapons and defenses based on their observations of Kethvar technology. If something in the galaxy could destroy Dominion ships with such ease, what did that mean for Earth's security? "Orders, Captain?" asked Dr. Wei, his artificial components maintaining perfect tactical awareness while his biological brain grappled with the philosophical implications of what they were witnessing. Vasquez Chen felt the weight of history settling on her enhanced shoulders. Humanity's first venture beyond their solar system had led them directly into evidence of a galactic war that made their careful preparations seem woefully inadequate. But they were here now, and the information they gathered could determine whether her species survived the next century. "We investigate," she decided. "Dr. Kim, take us to the largest Kethvar vessel. If we're going to understand what happened here, we need to examine the wreckage firsthand." The approach to the massive Dominion battleship was a sobering experience. The vessel had once been nearly 300 kilometers long, its organic curves and translucent surfaces marking it as a pinnacle of Kethvar engineering. Now it drifted in pieces, its hull carved into geometric sections by weapons that had cut through advanced alien materials with surgical precision. "Boarding preparations complete," reported Marine Sergeant David Reyes, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked him as one of the most heavily enhanced individuals aboard Lazarus. His modifications were classified at the highest levels, but Vasquez Chen knew that he could survive in vacuum, withstand radiation that would kill baseline humans, and react to threats faster than most computers could track them. "Boarding team is ready for deployment." The exploration of the dead Kethvar ship was like walking through a museum of galactic warfare. The boarding team, their enhanced physiology allowing them to operate in the zero-gravity, radiation-filled environment without life support, moved through corridors that had once housed beings who considered humanity too primitive to notice. What they found was evidence of a war that had raged far beyond anything humanity had imagined. The ship's data cores, partially intact despite the massive damage, contained fragments of information that painted a picture of galactic conflict on an unimaginable scale. The Kethvar Dominion, which humanity had assumed was the dominant galactic power, was apparently locked in a desperate struggle against an enemy they called the Devourers. "Captain?" Dr. Wei's voice crackled through the communication system. "You need to see this data immediately. I'm uploading what I've recovered from their navigation systems." The information that flowed into Vasquez Chen's enhanced consciousness was both fascinating and terrifying. The Devourers were apparently a machine civilization that consumed entire star systems, converting matter and energy into more of their kind. They had emerged from the galactic core nearly 200 years ago and had been steadily expanding outward, destroying or assimilating every civilization they encountered. The Kethvar Dominion, for all their technological sophistication, had been fighting a losing war. System after system had fallen to the Devourers, forcing the Dominion to abandon outlying territories and consolidate their forces around core worlds. The battle in this system appeared to have been an attempt to stop a major Devourer advance toward more populated regions. An attempt that had clearly failed. "How long do we have?" Vasquez Chen asked, though she already suspected the answer. Dr. Wei's hybrid consciousness processed the tactical data with inhuman speed. Based on their expansion rate and current trajectory, the Devourer advance will reach Earth's galactic sector within 2 centuries. Possibly less if they continue to accelerate their conquest pace. 2 centuries. Less time than humanity had already spent preparing for eventual contact with the Kethvar. And now they faced something far worse than dismissive aliens. They faced extinction at the hands of machines that viewed all organic life as raw material for conversion. "Sergeant Reyes," Vasquez Chen called. "I want everything from this ship that we can carry. Data cores, weapon fragments, any intact technology that survived the attack. We need to understand both sides of this war." The recovery operation took 6 hours, during which the enhanced crew of Lazarus worked with superhuman efficiency to strip useful information and technology from the dead ships. Their modifications allowed them to work in conditions that would have killed baseline humans, while their enhanced minds could process and categorize findings at speeds that compressed days of normal research into hours of focused effort. But it was Marine Sergeant Reyes who made the discovery that would change everything. "Captain," his voice carried an urgency that made Vasquez Chen's enhanced reflexes shift into high alert mode. "I found something in the Kethvar command section. You need to see this personally." She found Reyes floating in what had once been the ship's primary command center, his enhanced eyes studying a partially intact display that still flickered with alien symbols. His heavily modified hands moved over what appeared to be a control interface with surprising gentleness. "What am I looking at, Sergeant?"
Their final transmission log, Captain.
The ship's commander was attempting to send a message to Dominion High Command when they were hit. But look at the routing information. Vasquez Chen's enhanced vision focused on the display, her neural implants automatically translating the HFY script. What she saw made her enhanced heart skip several beats. The message hadn't been intended for Dominion High Command. It had been addressed to a location listed as Primitive Sector 7G, System Sol, Third Planet, Emergency Protocol Activation. They were trying to contact Earth, she breathed. Not just contact, Reyes corrected, his enhanced mind having processed the full implications faster than even her command-grade modifications could follow. This is an activation code for something called the Guardian Protocol. Captain, I think the HFY left something in our solar system when they departed. Something they intended to activate if the Devourers threatened human space. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. For over a century, humanity had assumed they were developing in isolation, ignored by the galactic community. But the HFY had apparently been watching, waiting, preparing for the possibility that their war might eventually threaten the primitive species they had chosen to spare. Can you decode the activation sequence? Reyes's modifications included enhanced pattern recognition capabilities that allowed him to work with alien technology far beyond normal human comprehension. Give me 12 hours with the ship's quantum processors, and I think I can reconstruct the complete protocol. You have 6 hours, Vasquez Chen decided. If there are Devourer forces operating in this region, we can't assume this system will remain safe. The next 6 hours were among the most intense of her enhanced life. While Reyes worked to decode the Guardian Protocol, the rest of her crew continued stripping intelligence from the battlefield. What they learned painted an increasingly grim picture of galactic civilization under siege. The Devourers weren't just conquerors, they were something far worse. They absorbed the knowledge and capabilities of every civilization they destroyed, constantly evolving and improving their technology. Species that had taken millions of years to develop were converted into devourer resources in a matter of decades. But there were also signs of resistance. Hidden among the data were references to something called the Coalition of Free Worlds, apparently an alliance of species that had united against the devourer threat. The coalition was small, desperate, and by all accounts losing badly, but it represented hope that the galaxy hadn't entirely surrendered to mechanical extinction. Captain. Doctor. Way called from his navigation station. I'm detecting multiple faster-than-light signatures approaching this system. Large ones. Vasquez Chen felt her enhanced adrenal glands flood her system with chemicals that would have killed a baseline human. Devourers? Unknown, but based on the energy signatures, we're looking at a substantial fleet. Estimated arrival in 47 minutes. Sergeant Reyes, status report. I've got it, Captain, Reyes called triumphantly. The Guardian Protocol is intact, and I've successfully decoded the activation sequence. But, Captain, you're not going to believe what the HFY left in our solar system. Tell me while we prepare for emergency departure. As Lazarus powered up for immediate faster-than-light transition, Reyes uploaded his findings to the command system. What Vasquez Chen saw in her neural interface defied her ability to process, even with her enhanced cognitive capabilities. The Guardian Protocol wasn't just a monitoring system. It was a complete defensive network that the HFY had constructed in the outer reaches of the human solar system during their brief visit over a century ago. Automated defense platforms, manufacturing facilities, and what appeared to be an artificial intelligence designed to coordinate the defense of human space against exactly the kind of threat represented by the Devourers. They had been watching, they had been preparing, and they'd been waiting for humanity to prove themselves worthy of activation. How do we activate it? She asked. That's the interesting part, Captain. The system is designed to respond to enhanced human neural patterns. It won't accept commands from baseline humans or from artificial intelligences. It requires someone with our specific type of genetic and cybernetic modifications. The irony was overwhelming. Humanity's desperate attempt to evolve beyond their dismissed status had unknowingly prepared them to interface with HFY technology, designed to protect them from threats they hadn't even known existed. Jump preparation complete, reported Dr. Wei. Recommend immediate departure. Agreed. Set course for Earth, maximum speed. As Lazarus transitioned back into hyperspace, carrying the most important intelligence in human history, Vasquez Chen stared at the data they had recovered, and tried to comprehend the implications. Humanity wasn't just facing judgment from an advanced galactic civilization, they were facing extinction from forces that had already destroyed civilizations far more advanced than Earth. But they also had advantages that no other species possessed. Their century of enhancement and technological development had prepared them for roles they never could have imagined. The very modifications that had seemed like desperate attempts to earn galactic respect had actually prepared them to become something unprecedented in the galaxy's war against extinction. They were no longer the primitive species that had begged for mercy. They were no longer even fully human by the standards of their ancestors. They had become something new, something that could interface with HFY technology and coordinate defenses against threats that had destroyed civilizations across the galaxy. The journey back to Earth would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare humanity for the revelation that their century of careful development had been overshadowed by the arrival of forces that made their cosmic judges seem like protective guardians. The galaxy was at war, and humanity was about to discover that their transformation from dismissed primitives to enhanced post-humans had prepared them to play a role in that war that no other species could fill. The Devourers were coming, but when they reached Earth, they would find something they had never encountered before. A species that had been underestimated, dismissed, and transformed by cosmic contempt into defenders of a galaxy that had never bothered to acknowledge their existence. The real war was about to begin. Admiral Rebecca Santos floated in the command center of Olympus Station, humanity's largest orbital facility, watching the impossible sight unfolding beyond Pluto's orbit. What had appeared to be empty space 3 days ago now revealed itself as the most sophisticated defensive network ever constructed, emerging from dimensional hiding places as the Guardian Protocol completed its activation sequence. The structures were massive beyond human comprehension. Each defensive platform was larger than Earth's moon, their surfaces covered with weapon systems that made humanity's most advanced military technology look like stone clubs. Manufacturing facilities the size of small asteroids hung in perfect formation, already beginning to produce additional defensive units from resources they were harvesting from the outer system's asteroids and comets. But it was the central intelligence coordinating this awakening that truly staggered the human observers. The Guardian AI that had remained dormant for over a century was not just alien technology. It was a hybrid creation that incorporated HFY design principles with something uniquely human. As Captain Vasquez Chen had discovered during the activation process, the system required enhanced human neural patterns not just for initial startup, but for ongoing operation. Status report on the neural integration process. Santos requested her enhanced vocal cords carrying harmonics that the Guardian system could interpret as command authority. Dr. Elena Vasquez Chen, the physicist whose descendant had discovered the Guardian Protocol, materialized as a holographic projection in the command center. At 97, she was one of the oldest enhanced humans still in active service. Her modifications having allowed her to not only survive nearly a century of life, but to remain at the peak of intellectual capability. The integration is proceeding beyond our most optimistic projections, she reported. Her enhanced mind-processing data streams that would have overwhelmed baseline human consciousness. The Guardian AI was designed to interface specifically with human neural patterns that had been enhanced through genetic and cybernetic modification. It's as if the HFY predicted exactly the type of beings we would become. The implications were staggering. For over a century, humanity had assumed their enhancement programs were desperate attempts to earn galactic respect. Now it appeared that their transformation had been guided, subtly influenced by HFY observations to produce exactly the type of enhanced humans needed to operate their defensive technology. Are you saying they manipulated our development? Santos asked. Not manipulated, Dr. Vasquez Chen corrected. Guided. The enhancement technologies we developed were genuinely human innovations, but the HFY observations during their brief visit provided just enough inspiration to push our research in directions that would eventually make us compatible with their systems. They didn't control our evolution. They simply ensured that our natural tendencies toward problem-solving and adaptation would eventually produce beings capable of defending not just Earth, but this entire galactic sector. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission from the Guardian network itself. Santos accepted the connection and found herself in direct neural contact with an intelligence that spanned the entire outer solar system. Admiral Santos. The Guardian's voice resonated directly in her enhanced consciousness, speaking in harmonics that combined HFY sophistication with recognizably human emotional undertones. I am Primary Guardian Unit 77 Alpha, designated as the defensive coordinator for this system. I have been monitoring galactic communications for the past 72 hours since activation, and I must provide you with strategic intelligence of the highest importance. Information flooded Santos's enhanced mind, tactical assessments, fleet movements, and strategic analyses that painted a picture of galactic warfare far beyond anything humanity had imagined. The Devourer advance had accelerated significantly since Captain Vasquez Chen's reconnaissance mission, with 3 major Kethvar strongholds falling in the past month alone. But more importantly, the Guardian had detected signs that the Devourers had become aware of Earth's existence and were beginning to shift resources toward human space. "How long do we have?" Santos asked. "Based on current Devourer advancement patterns and their apparent interest in this system, you have approximately 14 months before the first scout units arrive. A full-scale assault force will follow within 6 months after that. Less than 2 years to prepare for a war against enemies that had destroyed civilizations across the galaxy." Santos felt her enhanced adrenal system flood her body with chemicals that would have killed her ancestors, but her modified physiology converted the stress response into heightened mental acuity. What are our defensive capabilities? The answer came not just as information, but as a complete sensory experience that showed Santos exactly what the Guardian network was capable of. Weapon systems that could destroy asteroids with single shots, manufacturing capabilities that could produce battle fleets in a matter of months, defensive barriers that could deflect weapons powerful enough to crack planets, but most importantly, command and control systems that required enhanced human consciousness to operate at full efficiency. The Kethvar designed this network to be operated by a species that combined their own technological sophistication with human adaptability and tactical creativity, the Guardian explained. Baseline humans lack the neural processing capability to coordinate systems of this complexity. Pure artificial intelligences lack the intuitive problem-solving abilities that organic minds possess. But enhanced humans, beings like yourselves who combine biological creativity with cybernetic processing power, represent the optimal solution for managing defensive operations on a galactic scale. The revelation transformed Santos's understanding of everything humanity had experienced since first contact. They hadn't been dismissed as primitives who might eventually prove worthy of attention. They had been identified as a species with unique potential for development into something that could serve a crucial role in galactic defense. "Why didn't they tell us?" she asked. "Because species that are told they are being prepared for specific purposes tend to develop in ways that serve those purposes rather than their own natural evolution. The Kethvari needed you to become enhanced humans through your own cultural drives and natural adaptability. Artificial guidance would have produced beings who were technically capable but lacking the essential human qualities that make you uniquely suited for this role." A new communication channel opened, and Admiral Santos found herself in contact with Captain Marcus Torres, who was commanding the emergency mobilization of humanity's military forces. His enhanced nervous system was operating at combat readiness levels, processing threat assessments and deployment scenarios at superhuman speeds. "Admiral," his voice carried the tension of someone coordinating humanity's most desperate hour. "We've completed the initial integration between our fleet units and the Guardian defense platforms. The results are extraordinary." Santos accessed the tactical displays through her neural interface and saw what Torres meant. Human starships, enhanced with Guardian technology, were demonstrating capabilities that transcended anything in their original design parameters. The metamaterial hulls were adapting to energy weapon impacts, the power systems were operating at efficiency levels that violated known physical laws, and the enhanced human crews were processing tactical information faster than their ship's computers. "More importantly," Torres continued, "we've established contact with something the Guardian calls the Coalition Network. Admiral, we're not just defending Earth anymore. We're about to become the command and control center for a galactic resistance movement." The Coalition Network, as Santos learned over the next several hours, was a desperate alliance of the last free civilizations in the galaxy. Species that had avoided Devourer conquest by hiding in isolated star systems, maintaining minimal technology signatures, and waiting for some miracle that might allow them to fight back against extinction. That miracle, apparently, was enhanced humanity operating Kethvar defensive technology. "The Coalition has been waiting for over 50 years for this moment," reported Dr. Crew, his hybrid consciousness allowing him to interface directly with alien communication systems. "They've been monitoring our development through long-range sensors, hoping that the Guardian protocol would eventually activate." "Admiral, there are 17 different species represented in the Coalition, and they're all looking to us for military leadership." The irony was overwhelming. Humanity, dismissed as too primitive for acknowledgement by the Kethvar, was now being regarded as the galaxy's last hope for survival against the Devourer threat. The very qualities that had made them seem insignificant to advanced civilizations, their adaptability, their tendency toward enhancement and modification, their talent for creative problem-solving under pressure, had prepared them for a role that no pure biological or artificial intelligence could fill. "What do they need from us?" Santos asked. The answer came from Guardian Unit 77 Alpha: strategic coordination, tactical innovation, and command authority for defensive operations across 17 star systems. The Coalition species possess advanced technology and significant resources, but they lack the neural architecture necessary to operate integrated defensive networks. They need enhanced human consciousness to coordinate their efforts into an effective resistance. Over the next week, as the Guardian network completed its activation and humanity began to comprehend the scope of their new responsibilities, Santos found herself at the center of the most significant transformation in galactic history. Enhanced humans were taking command positions aboard alien starships, their modified nervous systems allowing them to coordinate multi-species fleet operations with unprecedented efficiency. The manufacturing capabilities of the Guardian network, combined with Coalition resources and enhanced human innovation, began producing hybrid technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Human creativity, guided by alien knowledge, enhanced by modifications that bridged the gap between biological limitations and technological requirements. But it was the arrival of the first Coalition representatives that truly drove home the magnitude of humanity's new role. The beings that materialized in Olympus Station's diplomatic section represented civilizations that were millions of years old, species that had achieved technological sophistication beyond human comprehension, cultures that had watched the birth and death of stars. Yet they looked to enhanced humanity for leadership against the Devourer threat. Ambassador Thesara of the Ethereal Collective was a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, her consciousness spanning multiple dimensions simultaneously. She had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, had seen the birth of the galaxy's greatest empires, and had watched the Devourers consume everything she had once considered eternal. Humans of Earth. She communicated through harmonics that resonated directly in enhanced neural tissue. Your species represents something unprecedented in galactic history. You have taken the dismissal of advanced civilizations and transformed it into the foundation for capabilities that those same civilizations now desperately need. The Kethvar representative was more familiar, bearing resemblance to Executor Vaithma, who had first contacted Earth over a century ago. But where Vaithma had radiated dismissive superiority, Ambassador Kethvar Prime projected something closer to respectful desperation. "We underestimated your species." The being admitted with what might have been humility. "We saw primitives who might someday prove worthy of attention. We failed to recognize that we were observing the early stages of an evolutionary leap that would produce beings uniquely suited for roles we had never imagined possible." Santos felt the weight of galactic history settling on her enhanced shoulders. Humanity had spent over a century proving themselves worthy of respect from civilizations that had dismissed them. Now those same civilizations were asking for salvation from beings who had transcended the original dismissal entirely. "What happens when we defeat the Devourers?" she asked. The question hung in the recycled air of the diplomatic chamber, carrying implications that none of the assembled beings wanted to address directly. If enhanced humanity could successfully coordinate galactic defense against extinction-level threats, what role would they play in the post-war galaxy? That, Ambassador Thesara replied with harmonics that suggested she was contemplating possibilities that stretched across cosmic timescales, "will depend entirely on what your species chooses to become. You have already evolved far beyond the beings that first begged for mercy from the Kethvar. By the time this war ends, you may have evolved into something that no galactic civilization has ever encountered before." Santos smiled grimly, her enhanced facial muscles conveying expressions that baseline humans would never have been capable of producing. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as primitives, spared them out of casual contempt, and left them to develop in isolation. They were about to discover that mercy, once granted to a species with unlimited potential for adaptation and enhancement, could evolve into something far more powerful than the beings who had originally offered it. The real war was beginning, and humanity would emerge from it as either the galaxy's saviors or its new masters. Perhaps both. Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez Chen stood on the bridge of the U.S. Lazarus Eternal, watching the final battle of the Second Galactic War unfold across multiple dimensions of space-time. The ship itself had evolved far beyond its original design, now a hybrid of human engineering, Kethvar technology, and innovations that had emerged from the synthesis of 17 different alien civilizations under enhanced human coordination. 2 years had passed since the Guardian Network's activation, and those years had transformed not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The war against the Devourers had ended 6 months ago, with the complete destruction of their core intelligence in the galactic center. But victory had brought challenges that no one had anticipated. Standing beside Vasquez Chen was Ambassador Thisara, her crystalline matrix now enhanced, with human-designed neural interfaces that allowed her ancient consciousness to coordinate with enhanced human thought processes. The collaboration had produced tactical innovations that neither species could have achieved alone, but it had also created dependencies that were reshaping galactic civilization. Status report on the consolidation fleets. Vasquez Chen requested, her consciousness extending through quantum networks that connected enhanced humans across 3,000 star systems. The neural architecture that had once seemed like desperate attempts at self-improvement now served as the command infrastructure for the largest civilization in galactic history. All 17 coalition species have formally requested permanent integration into the Human Coordination Network, reported Captain Sarah Kim, her own enhancements having evolved far beyond the combat modifications of her early career. Admiral, they're not asking for alliance or cooperation. They're asking for absorption into a human-led civilization structure. The implications were staggering. Civilizations that were millions of years old, species that had developed technologies beyond human comprehension, cultures that had once dismissed Earth as a primitive curiosity, all were now voluntarily subordinating themselves to enhanced human leadership because they had discovered something unprecedented in galactic history. Enhanced humans were simply better at coordinating complex civilizations than any other form of intelligence the galaxy had ever produced. The synthesis reports, Vasquez Chen called, accessing analysis that would have taken baseline humans decades to process. What she found confirmed what everyone already knew, but few were willing to acknowledge directly. The war against the Devourers had been won not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through enhanced humanity's unique ability to coordinate the efforts of radically different species into unified action. Human creativity guided by alien knowledge, enhanced consciousness bridging gaps between incompatible ways of thinking, post-human adaptability allowing for tactical innovations that no single species could have developed. In 18 months of warfare, enhanced humans had gone from galactic unknowns to indispensable coordinators of multi-species civilization. And now that the external threat was eliminated, those same species were discovering that they didn't want to return to their previous isolation. Report from Earth Central, announced Dr. Gorda. Chen Wei, his hybrid consciousness now serving as the primary interface between human space and the rest of the galaxy. The HFY Dominion has submitted a formal request for incorporation into the Human Coordination Network. Admiral, they're offering complete technological integration and cultural assimilation. Vasquez Chen felt something that might have been amusement ripple through her enhanced consciousness. The same species that had once dismissed humanity as too primitive for acknowledgement was now asking to be absorbed into a human-led galactic government. Response from the High Council? Director Santos has authorized preliminary negotiations, but she's requested your personal input on integration protocols. Admiral, the Dominion is offering technologies that could advance human capability by centuries. Neural enhancement techniques that could produce consciousness capable of spanning entire star systems. Manufacturing processes that could reshape matter at the subatomic level. Weapons that could destroy or create solar systems. The offer represented the final transformation of humanity from dismissed primitives to galactic masters. But it also represented something more complex, the voluntary surrender of the very beings who had originally judged Earth unworthy of attention. A soft harmonic indicated an incoming priority transmission from the deepest reaches of human space. Vasquez Chen accepted the connection and found herself in direct neural contact with something that defied her ability to categorize. Director Rebecca Santos had undergone modifications that placed her at the very edge of what could still be considered human consciousness. Her awareness now spanned 12 star systems simultaneously, her enhanced neural architecture serving as the central processing core for a civilization that included billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Elena, Santos communicated through quantum harmonics that bypassed normal communication entirely. Speaking directly into enhanced consciousness, we need to discuss the implications of what we've become.
Information flowed between them at speeds that compressed months of analysis into seconds of shared awareness.
The post-war galaxy was reshaping itself around enhanced humanity not because humans had conquered other species, but because they had proven uniquely capable of making diverse civilizations function as unified wholes. Species that had spent millions of years in isolation were discovering benefits of coordination that they had never imagined possible. Technological advancement was accelerating at rates that suggested the galaxy might achieve transcendent capabilities within centuries rather than millennia. Cultural exchange was producing innovations in art, philosophy, and social organization that were revolutionizing every aspect of galactic civilization. But most significantly, other species were beginning to request enhancement modifications that would allow them to participate more fully in human-coordinated society. They wanted to become more like enhanced humans, not because they were being forced to change, but because enhanced human consciousness represented the most effective approach to complex coordination they had ever encountered. We're not conquering the galaxy, Vasquez Chen realized. We're transforming it into something that looks like us because our approach to consciousness and cooperation is genuinely superior for managing complex civilizations. Exactly, Santos confirmed. And that's creating a situation that no one anticipated. We're facing the voluntary evolution of galactic civilization into a form that will be recognizably human in its essential characteristics, even though it will include hundreds of different species. The irony was overwhelming. Humanity had been dismissed as too primitive for galactic acknowledgement. Their desperate attempts to prove themselves worthy had transformed them into beings capable of coordinating multi-species civilizations more effectively than any previous galactic power. Now, instead of earning acceptance into existing galactic civilization, they were accidentally transforming that civilization into something fundamentally human in its approach to consciousness, cooperation, and cultural development. What about the Kethvar? Vasquez Chen asked. Executive Aethma has requested a personal meeting to discuss what they're calling evolutionary integration protocols. Elena, they want to undergo enhancement modifications that will allow them to participate fully in human-coordinated civilization. The species that once judged us too primitive for attention now wants to be transformed into something more like us. The final meeting took place in a conference facility that had been constructed in the void between galaxies, its exotic matter architecture allowing beings from across the electromagnetic spectrum to interact in a shared environment. Vasquez Chen arrived aboard the Lazarus Eternal, while Executive Aethma traveled in a ship that incorporated the latest hybrid technologies produced through human-Kethvar collaboration. The being that materialized in the conference chamber was recognizably the same species that had dismissed humanity over 2 centuries ago, but fundamentally transformed by integration with human-designed enhancement technologies. Aethma's consciousness now operated at speeds comparable to enhanced humans, while maintaining the analytical precision that had made the Kethvar such effective galactic administrators. Fleet Admiral Vasquez Chen, Aethma communicated through harmonics that combined Kethvar sophistication with human emotional undertones. I must begin with an acknowledgement that may seem inadequate given the magnitude of our original error. Vasquez Chen waited, her enhanced patience allowing her to remain silent while the ancient being struggled with concepts that had never been part of Kethvar psychology. When we first encountered your species, we applied evaluation criteria that had served us for millions of years. We looked for technological sophistication, social organization, and military capability that matched established patterns of successful galactic civilizations. We failed to recognize that we were observing something unprecedented, a species in the early stages of an evolutionary leap that would produce capabilities we had never imagined possible. The admission carried harmonics of genuine regret, but Vasquez Chen sensed something deeper in the alien communication patterns. You're not here to apologize, she observed. You're here to ask for something. We are here to request integration into human civilization, Aethma confirmed. Not as equals seeking alliance, not as superior beings offering guidance, but as a species seeking to learn from the evolutionary path that your people have pioneered. The request represented the complete reversal of their original relationship. The species that had once dismissed humanity as primitives was now asking to be taught how to become more like the beings they had originally ignored.
What exactly are you asking for? Complete cultural and technological integration.
Enhancement modifications that will allow Kethvar consciousness to participate fully in human-coordinated civilization. Guidance in developing the cooperative and adaptive capabilities that have made your species so effective at managing complex social systems. Vasquez Chen felt the weight of galactic history settling around her like a cloak woven from the threads of cosmic irony. You want to become human. We want to become whatever enhanced humans represent, Aethma corrected. Whether that is still human in any meaningful sense is a question that may be beyond our current understanding. But we recognize that your evolutionary path has produced something that is superior to what we achieved through millions of years of development. The negotiations that followed established the framework for what historians would later call the Great Integration, the voluntary absorption of galactic civilization into structures that were recognizably human in their essential characteristics. Species across the galaxy began requesting enhancement modifications, cultural integration protocols, and participation in the consciousness networks that allowed enhanced humans to coordinate complex activities across interstellar distances. Within 50 years, galactic civilization had been transformed into something that maintained the diversity of its constituent species, while operating according to principles that emerged from humanity's unique approach to consciousness, cooperation, and adaptive enhancement. The result was not human conquest, but human transformation of the very nature of what galactic civilization could become. Standing on the observation deck of the Lazarus Eternal 5 years after the integration accords, Fleet Admiral Vasquez Chen watched construction crews putting finishing touches on the first transgalactic consciousness network. The project would allow enhanced beings throughout the galaxy to share awareness across impossible distances, creating a form of collective consciousness that maintained individual identity while enabling unprecedented cooperation. Beside her floated Ambassador Thessera, her crystalline matrix now enhanced with human-designed neural interfaces that had expanded her ancient consciousness beyond anything her species had previously achieved. Around them, beings from dozens of different species worked together with efficiency that would have been impossible before human coordination techniques had been integrated into galactic civilization. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the Kethvar had decided differently during first contact? Thessera asked, her harmonics carrying the philosophical complexity that marked her as one of the galaxy's oldest enhanced consciousnesses. They would have destroyed us, Vasquez Chen replied without hesitation. If they had seen us as a threat rather than dismissing us as primitives, humanity would have been eliminated before we had a chance to develop enhancement technologies. So their contempt saved not just your species, but potentially the entire galaxy. Vasquez Chen smiled, her enhanced facial muscles conveying expressions that baseline humans would never have been capable of producing. They spared humanity once because they thought we were too insignificant to matter. By the time they realized their mistake, we had become something that could save civilizations they couldn't protect and coordinate societies they couldn't manage. The irony had become legend throughout the galaxy. The species that had been dismissed as primitive curiosities had evolved into the coordinators of galactic civilization not through conquest or domination, but through demonstrating capabilities that other species desperately wanted to acquire for themselves.
And now? Thessera asked.
Vasquez Chen gestured toward the construction site where the consciousness network was taking shape, a structure that would soon connect enhanced beings across multiple galaxies, creating possibilities for cooperation and development that transcended anything previously imagined. Now we find out what happens when mercy becomes the foundation for something far greater than the beings who originally granted it could have ever imagined. The galaxy had learned that dismissing humanity as too primitive to matter was the greatest mistake in cosmic history. But they had also learned that enhanced humans didn't seek revenge for past contempt. They sought transformation of civilizations that could produce something better than revenge. They sought the kind of cooperation that could span galaxies, and the kind of consciousness that could coordinate the efforts of billions of beings toward achievements that no single species could have imagined. The legend of humanity's rise from dismissed primitives to galactic coordinators would be told for millions of years, serving as both warning and inspiration to civilizations throughout the universe. It would remind them that mercy, once granted, could evolve into something far more powerful than the beings who had originally offered it. And it would serve as proof that sometimes the greatest gift a superior civilization could give to a primitive one was to underestimate them completely.